In Atlanta's Precinct 7, there's an unwritten rule. What happens in the family stays in the family. For generations, that rule kept the corrupt safe and the honest silent. But they never counted on Malik Johnson. When a young woman's body surfaces in a high-ranking officer's bathtub, they expect him to look away like all the others. Instead, he takes pictures. Instead, he asks questions. Instead, he makes them remember what a real cop looks like, and it terrifies them. Now they've taken everything: his badge, his freedom, his reputation. They're holding his family hostage and hunting him through the streets he once protected. But in their rush to bury one honest cop, they've made a fatal mistake. They've given him nothing left to lose. The thin blue line is about to learn why the most dangerous enemy isn't the one who wants to destroy the system. It's the one who still believes in it enough to tear it down and build it right. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. Officer. Malik Johnson's fingers drummed against his patrol car's steering wheel as the early morning sun painted golden streaks across Atlanta's skyline. His partner, Derek Walsh, sat beside him, nursing his third coffee of the shift. "Man, you look tired," Derek commented, glancing at Malik. "Zuri keeping you up again?" A smile crossed Malik's face at the mention of his daughter. "She's got more energy than both of us combined. Started trying to climb out of her crib last night. Tanisha caught her mid-escape. Sounds like someone's ready for a big girl bed," Derek chuckled, but their conversation was cut short by the crackle of the radio. "Units in Zone 4, domestic disturbance reported at 1542 Oakwood Drive. Response needed." Malik's hand moved to the radio before dispatch finished the address. Unit 247 responding. He recognized the address. It belonged to Captain Jonathan Caldwell, one of the highest-ranking officers in their precinct. As they pulled up to the sprawling colonial house, everything seemed eerily quiet. No screaming, no visible disturbance, just the morning breeze rustling through carefully manicured hedges. "Something feels off," Malik muttered, approaching the front door with measured steps. His hand instinctively rested on his holster, a habit born from 8 years on the force. Derek rang the doorbell and they waited. Seconds stretched into a minute before the door swung open, revealing Captain Caldwell. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, shirt wrinkled and hair unkempt. "Officers," Caldwell's voice carried a slight tremor. "There's been a misunderstanding. Everything's fine here." Malik caught the metallic scent of blood before he saw it, a small droplet on Caldwell's sleeve. "Sir, we need to check the premises. Standard procedure." Caldwell's jaw tightened, but he stepped aside. The house's interior was pristine, almost unnaturally so. Family photos lined the walls. Caldwell, his wife Sarah, and their son Ethan, all wearing picture-perfect smiles. "Upstairs," Derek whispered, pointing to a faint trail of water droplets on the hardwood floor. They followed the trail to the master bathroom, where their world shifted on its axis. A young woman lay motionless in the bathtub, her dark hair floating, like seaweed in pink-tinged water. Her lifeless eyes stared at the ceiling, and bruises marked her neck. "Jesus Christ," Derek breathed. "That's Catherine Martinez." Caldwell's voice came from behind them, steady now. "My son's girlfriend. She must have slipped in the tub. Terrible accident." Malik's training kicked in as he surveyed the scene. The shower curtain was partially torn. A towel rack had been pulled from the wall. The mirror was cracked in one corner. This was no accident. "We need to call this in," Malik said, reaching for his radio. "Hold on." Caldwell stepped forward. "Let's think about this rationally. She slipped, hit her head. These things happen. No need to make it more than it is." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, with all due respect." "Walsh," Caldwell cut him off. "Why don't you secure the perimeter? I need a word with Officer Johnson." Once Derek left, Caldwell's demeanor changed. His shoulders straightened, and his eyes hardened. "Johnson, you're a good officer. Smart. Dedicated. You've got a beautiful family. How old is your daughter now? 4. 3, Malik answered, his hand already reaching for his phone, thumb hovering over the camera button. 3. Precious. Age. Caldwell moved closer. Listen, son. Sometimes things aren't as they appear. Sometimes the right thing to do isn't what the rulebook says. You understand? Malik met Caldwell's gaze. No, sir. I don't believe I do. My boy Ethan, he's had his struggles, drugs, anger issues. But he's getting help. He's turning his life around. One mistake shouldn't define him. A mistake? Malik's voice hardened. There's a dead woman in your bathroom. An accident, Caldwell insisted. And accidents can be handled quietly, or they can become messy for everyone involved. The threat hung in the air between them. Malik thought of Tanisha and Zuri, of the life they'd built, but he also thought of the young woman in the bathtub, of her family waiting for her to come home. I'll give you some time to think it over, Caldwell said, patting Malik's shoulder. Make the right choice, son. As soon as Caldwell left, Malik's phone came up. He photographed everything: the broken towel rack, the cracked mirror, the bruises. His hands shook slightly, but the images were clear. Over the next few days, Malik dug deeper. Catherine Martinez, 23, graduate student at Emory University. She'd been dating Ethan Caldwell for 6 months. A background check revealed 3 domestic violence calls to Ethan's apartment in the past year, all mysteriously dropped. The precinct felt different now. Eyes followed Malik through the hallways. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. His paperwork started coming back with unnecessary corrections. His overtime requests were denied. You need to let this go, Derek warned him over lunch. You're playing with fire. But Malik couldn't let it go. He thought of Catherine every time he looked at Zuri, imagining her growing up in a world where men like Ethan Caldwell could literally get away with murder. The intimidation escalated. One morning, Malik found his year. Car's tires slashed. The next day, Tanisha called him at work, voice shaking. Someone's been watching the house, she said. I saw a car parked across the street all morning. When I went to check, it drove away. That night, as they put Zuri to bed, Tanisha grabbed Malik's hand. Whatever's going on, whatever you're involved in, we're with you, but please be careful. He kissed her forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of her coconut shampoo. I love you both too much to let this go. If I back down now, what am I teaching our daughter about standing up for what's right? The next morning, Malik walked into internal affairs with his evidence. The detective, James Harrison, listened impassively as Malik laid out the case. Serious allegations, Harrison said, shuffling through the photos. We'll look into it, but something in Harrison's tone made Malik's skin crawl, the way he barely glanced at the evidence. The slight smirk when Malik mentioned Caldwell's name. Walking back to his car, Malik's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You should have listened. Now you'll learn the hard way. That evening, as Malik drove home, he noticed a patrol car following him. 2 blocks from his house, another joined from a side street. In his rearview mirror, he saw Derek Walsh behind the wheel of the first car, face set in grim determination. Malik's heart raced as he realized the truth. He wasn't just fighting one corrupt officer. He was up against an entire system, one that had already decided his fate. The perfect officer was about to become the perfect scapegoat. He pulled into his driveway, watching the patrol cars cruise past slowly. Inside, Tanisha was helping Zuri with her coloring books at the kitchen table. Their laughter floated through the house, a reminder of everything he stood to lose. But as he watched his daughter carefully color inside the lines, tongue sticking out in concentration, Malik knew he'd made the right choice. Some lines weren't meant to be crossed, no matter the cost. He didn't know it yet, but his decision had set in motion events that would shake the precinct to its core. The perfect officer was about to learn just how imperfect the system could be, and how far some would go to protect their own. As night fell over Atlanta, Malik Johnson sat in his daughter's room, watching her sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats. But for now, in the quiet darkness, he found strength in the simple rise and fall of Zuri's chest, in the knowledge that doing the right thing wasn't always easy, but it was always necessary. In the distance, sirens wailed, a sound that once represented justice to Malik, but now carried a more ominous tone. The thin blue line was about to show its true colors, and Malik Johnson would never see his badge the same way again. The morning after Malik submitted his evidence to Internal Affairs, his radio crackled with a routine call, a reported disturbance at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Atlanta. Simple, straightforward, the kind of call he'd handled countless times before. But today, something felt different. 427 responding. Malik answered, glancing at his empty passenger seat. Derek had called in sick, the first time in their 3-year partnership. The silence in the car felt heavy, pregnant with possibility. The warehouse loomed ahead, its weathered brick walls casting long shadows in the early morning light. Graffiti marked its exterior like ancient war paint, and broken windows gaped, like missing teeth. Malik's boots crunched on broken glass as he approached, hand resting on his holster. Atlanta PD, he called out, voice echoing through the cavernous space. No response, just the whisper of wind through broken windows and the distant hum of highway traffic. The first floor revealed nothing unusual, just empty space and decades of dust. But as Malik climbed the stairs to the second floor, he caught the metallic scent of blood. His heart rate quickened as he rounded the corner. A body lay sprawled, near a broken window, blood pooling on the concrete floor. Malik recognized the victim immediately. Marcus Thompson, a known informant who'd worked with the department for years. A gun rested near his outstretched hand. Malik reached for his radio, but before he could call it in, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to find Captain Caldwell and 2 officers he didn't recognize. Tragic scene, isn't it? Caldwell's voice carried an edge of satisfaction. Your prints are all over that murder weapon, Johnson. Guess you couldn't risk the informant talking about your drug connections. What? Malik's mind raced. I just got here. I haven't touched anything. That's not what the evidence will show. Caldwell nodded to the officers. Take him in. The cold bite of handcuffs shocked Malik back to reality. This was really happening. They'd set him up perfectly, and isolated. Location, a convenient victim, and his partner conveniently absent. The drive to the precinct passed in a blur. Officers who'd smiled and joked with him yesterday now avoided his gaze. The booking process felt surreal. Fingerprints, mugshot, personal belongings cataloged and stored away. His badge and gun surrendered to evidence. News cameras waited outside the precinct. Malik's heart sank as he recognized the reporter, Sarah Bennett from Channel 5, known for her sensational coverage of police corruption. Officer Johnson. She thrust a microphone toward his face. How do you respond to allegations that you murdered an informant to protect your criminal activities? Malik said nothing, but his mind screamed at the injustice. He'd spent 8 years building his reputation, earning trust, doing everything right. Now it was crumbling in minutes. The worst moment came when they let him past the precinct's front desk. Tanisha stood there, Zuri clutching her hand. His daughter's eyes widened with confusion and fear at seeing her father in handcuffs. Daddy? Zuri's voice trembled. It's okay, baby, Malik managed, forcing a smile. Everything's going to be okay. But Tanisha's eyes told a different story. She knew. They both did. That nothing about this was okay. The cell door clanged shut with finality. Through the bars, Malik watched his former colleagues process paperwork, take calls, continue their daily routines as if one of their own hadn't just been framed for murder. Hours stretched into days. Malik's court-appointed lawyer seemed more interested in pushing a plea deal than proving his innocence. The evidence against him mounted, his fingerprints on the murder weapon, security footage showing his patrol car near the warehouse days before the murder, anonymous tips about his supposed drug connections. Caldwell played his part perfectly, expressing disappointment in press conferences about the betrayal of trust by one of his officers. Derek Walsh gave interviews describing how he'd noticed changes in his partner's behavior, suggesting Malik had been troubled recently. But not everyone bought the official story. Aaliyah Carter, an investigative journalist and Malik's childhood friend, started asking uncomfortable questions. Why had Malik been dispatched alone to the warehouse? How had his fingerprints appeared on a gun he'd never touched? Why were key pieces of evidence being processed unusually quickly? Her articles in the Atlanta Tribune sparked small protests outside the precinct. Community members who knew Malik, who'd seen his work in their neighborhoods, refused to believe he was corrupt. In jail, Malik received an unexpected visitor, Officer Jamal Perez, a rookie he'd helped train. Jamal sat across from him, speaking quietly while pretending to review paperwork. "Something's wrong with the evidence," Jamal whispered. "The timestamps on the security footage don't match up, and the fingerprints, they're too perfect, like they were planted. Can you prove it?" Malik leaned forward. "Not yet, but I'm looking. And I'm not the only one who knows something's not right." Jamal glanced around nervously. "Watch your back in here. Caldwell's got connections in the jail." That warning proved prophetic. 3 days later, 2 inmates cornered Malik in the shower. The fight was brief but violent. Malik managed to fight them off, but not before taking a sharp blade between his ribs. As he lay in the infirmary, watching blood seep through white bandages, Malik realized he couldn't wait for justice to run its course. He'd played by the rules his entire life, believed in the system. Now that same system was trying to bury him. Aaliyah visited him in the infirmary, smuggling in a burner phone hidden in a legal pad. "I've been digging," she said. "Caldwell's son Ethan disappeared right after Catherine's murder. Nobody's seen him in weeks." "He's hiding him." Malik winced as he shifted position. "Protecting him from prosecution. There's more. The internal affairs detective who took your evidence, he and Caldwell graduated from the academy together. They've been friends for 30 years. The pieces were falling into place, but knowledge wasn't enough. Malik needed proof and freedom to find it. The escape plan came together slowly, carefully. Jamal provided information about guard rotations and security blind spots. Aaliyah arranged a safe house and gathered supplies. But the hardest part was convincing Tanisha. "They'll hunt you," she protested during her last visit. "You'll never be able to come home." "I'm already hunted." Malik took her hand through the visiting room window. "At least this way I have a chance to prove the truth." Tears rolled down Tanisha's cheeks. "Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll come back to us. I promise." He pressed his palm against the glass, matching it to hers. "Take care of our girl. Tell her." His voice caught. "Tell her Daddy's working to make things right." The escape happened during a prisoner transfer. A mechanical failure in the transport van, courtesy of Jamal's connections in the motor pool. A moment of confusion, a dash for freedom through rain-slicked streets. By the time the alarm sounded, Malik was gone, leaving behind his uniform, his badge, and the life he'd built. But he carried with him something more important. The truth about Catherine Martinez's murder, about Caldwell's corruption, about a system that would sacrifice an innocent man to protect its own. As he huddled in the back of Aaliyah's car, speeding through Atlanta's night-shrouded streets, Malik thought about choices. He'd chosen to be a cop because he believed in justice. He'd chosen to stand up against corruption because he believed in right and wrong. Now he'd chosen to become a fugitive because he believed the truth had to come out, no matter the cost. Rain pelted the car windows, obscuring the city lights into blurred streaks of color. Somewhere out there, Tanisha was probably lying awake, worried. Zuri might be asking where Daddy was, why he couldn't come home. Caldwell was likely already organizing the manhunt, spreading Malik's photo to every precinct and news station in Georgia. But for now, all Malik could do was watch the raindrops race down the window and plan his next move. He'd lost his badge, but not his determination to serve justice. They'd tried to frame the perfect officer, but they'd created something far more dangerous. A man with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. "Where are we heading?" he asked Aaliyah, who'd been silent since the escape. "Somewhere safe," she answered, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "But Malik, this is just the beginning. They're going to come at you with everything they've got. Let them come." Malik touched the wound in his side, feeling the truth of his words. "I'm done playing by their rules." The car disappeared into the night, carrying its fugitive passenger toward an uncertain future. Behind them, sirens began to wail, their sound mixing with the thunder that rolled across Atlanta's sky. The hunt was on. But this time, the prey knew exactly who his predators were, and he was ready to fight back. Years of training, of following procedures and respecting the chain of command, had taught Malik how cops think, how they track, how they build cases. Now he would use that knowledge against them, turning their own tactics into weapons in his fight for justice. As the city lights faded behind them, Malik closed his eyes and thought of Zuri's smile, of Tanisha's strength, of the truth waiting to be uncovered. He'd lost his freedom, but he'd found something else, a purpose bigger than himself, a cause worth any sacrifice. The perfect officer was gone. In his place sat a man determined to expose the corruption that had destroyed his life, no matter the cost. The real battle was just beginning, and Malik Johnson was ready for war. Rain continued to fall as they drove through the darkness, each drop another second ticking away in the countdown to justice. Somewhere in Atlanta, a corrupt system celebrated its victory, not realizing they'd created their own worst nightmare. An honest cop with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The hunt was on, but this time, the hunter might become the hunted. The abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Atlanta seemed to breathe in the summer heat, its metal walls expanding and contracting with soft groans. Malik Johnson sat in the darkness, surrounded by the ghosts of industry past, rusted machinery, broken pallets, and the constant drip of water from somewhere in the ceiling. 3 days had passed since his escape, and each minute felt like an eternity away from Tanisha and Zuri. His burner phone buzzed. A text from Aaliyah. "News at 6 covering your manhunt. Caldwell's playing it big. Stay put." Malik switched on the small portable TV they'd set up, its blue light casting strange shadows on the warehouse walls. Captain Caldwell's face filled the screen, his expression a perfect mask of concern and determination. "Officer Johnson's escape represents a danger to our community," Caldwell declared, standing at a podium bristling with microphones. "He's armed, dangerous, and desperate. We urge citizens to remain vigilant and report any sightings immediately." The camera panned to show photos of Malik in his uniform, smiling proudly at his academy graduation, then cut to footage of him being led into the courthouse in handcuffs. The contrast was deliberate, designed to show his fall from grace. "Bastard's good at this," Malik muttered, crushing an empty water bottle in his fist. The plastic crackled like distant gunfire in the warehouses. Fastness. His phone buzzed again, Jamal this time. "Got something big. Network of corrupt officers bigger than we thought. Sending list of names." The message that followed made Malik's blood run cold. 20 names, including high-ranking officers he'd respected, judges he'd testified before, even prosecutors he'd worked with. The corruption wasn't just in the precinct. It had metastasized throughout the entire justice system. A sudden noise outside made him freeze. Footsteps on gravel, then silence. Malik melted into the shadows, hand instinctively reaching for a weapon. That wasn't there. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by the beam of a flashlight sweeping through broken windows. "Malik?" Aaliyah's whisper carried through the darkness. "It's me." He emerged slowly, still cautious. Aaliyah looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes betraying sleepless nights of investigation. She carried a laptop bag and what looked like takeout containers. "Brought you dinner," she said, setting everything down on a makeshift table of wooden pallets. "And information. You need to see this." As Malik ate his first hot meal in days, Aaliyah pulled up documents on her laptop. Financial records, phone logs, surveillance photos, pieces of a puzzle they were slowly assembling. The drug money's being laundered through a series of shell companies, she explained, pointing to highlighted transactions. All connected to businesses owned by retired officers. It's been going on for years. How deep does this go? Malik leaned forward, studying the screen. Deep enough that... Aaliyah stopped mid-sentence, head snapping toward a noise outside. Distant sirens growing closer. Police bands lit up, she whispered, checking her phone. Someone reported suspicious activity in this area. Malik was already moving, gathering essential documents and electronics. They had a routine now. Grab, pack, disappear. Leave no trace. Within minutes, the warehouse looked as abandoned as it had before they arrived. They slipped out through a hidden exit Malik had scouted on his first day, just as red and blue lights began to paint the neighboring buildings. Aaliyah's car was parked 3 blocks away, hidden behind a defunct auto repair shop. As they drove through Atlanta's back streets, Malik's phone buzzed with an incoming call. No caller ID. He answered cautiously. "Daddy?" Zuri's small voice made his heart stop. "Baby girl," he breathed, fighting back tears. "Are you being good for Mama?" "I miss you. When are you coming home?" Malik closed his eyes, remembering her face, her smile, the way she'd giggle when he chased her around the house. "Soon, baby. Daddy's just working on something important. Mama cries at night," Zuri said softly. "She thinks I'm sleeping, but I hear her." The words hit Malik like physical blows. Aaliyah glanced at him, concern etched on her face. "Tell Mama I love her," he managed. "And remember what I always say about being brave? Being brave doesn't mean not being scared," Zuri recited. "It means doing what's right even when you are scared." "That's my girl. I have to go now, but..." "Police!" A new voice cut through the line. "Mrs. Johnson, step away from the phone." The call went dead. "They're monitoring Tanisha's phone," Aaliyah said, making a sharp turn down a side street. "We need to find another way to communicate." Malik stared out the window, watching the city. Blur past. The guilt weighed on him like lead armor. His family was suffering because of his choices, because he'd decided to stand up against corruption. "Maybe I should..." "Don't!" Aaliyah cut him off. "Don't even think about turning yourself in. They'll kill you before you can expose them." She was right, but it didn't make the reality any easier to bear. They drove in silence until reaching their new safe house, a foreclosed home in a neighborhood full of similar properties, where nobody asked questions and everybody minded their own business. Inside, Malik found Jamal waiting, still in his uniform. The young officer looked nervous, but determined. "Got something you need to hear," Jamal said, pulling out his phone. He played a recording, Caldwell's voice crystal clear. "Crystal. Keep pressure on Johnson's wife," Caldwell was saying. "She'll break eventually. Everyone has a breaking point." "What about the kid?" another voice asked. "Use her. Promise the mother will leave them alone if she convinces Johnson to turn himself." In standard procedure, Malik's fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. "I'll kill him." "No," Aaliyah grabbed his arm. "That's exactly what they want. Give them an excuse to put you down. We need to be smarter." She was right again, but the rage still burned hot in Malik's chest. He thought of Tanisha alone with Zuri, surrounded by cops pretending to protect them while really holding them hostage. "There's more," Jamal said. "I've been tracking Ethan Caldwell's ex-girlfriend, Vanessa Mitchell. She's in hiding, but I think I found her." This caught Malik's attention. Vanessa had been there the night Catherine Martinez died. She might be the key to proving Ethan's guilt and his father's cover-up. "Where?" "Small town in Tennessee, living under her mother's maiden name. But here's the thing. She's scared. Really scared. Been moving every few weeks, paying cash for everything. She knows they'll kill her if they find her," Aaliyah said. "Just like they'll kill you, Malik." A plan began to form in Malik's mind. "We need to get to her before they do. But first we need insurance, something to keep Caldwell from coming after my family." They spent the next hours plotting, analyzing data on Aaliyah's laptop, and building a strategy. Jamal had to return to the precinct. His absence would be noticed, but not before sharing more critical information about the department's movements. As night fell, Malik stood at the window, watching the neighborhood settle into darkness. Somewhere out there, his daughter was probably getting ready for bed, maybe asking Tanisha to read her favorite story one more time. The distance between them felt infinite. His mentor's words from the academy echoed in his mind. A good cop fights for justice. A great cop fights for truth no matter the cost. Harold Gaines had been like a father to him during training, teaching him everything he knew about being a good officer. Now Malik wondered if Gaines knew about the corruption, if he'd been part of it all along. A text from an unknown number interrupted his thoughts. Watch your back, Johnson. Not everyone in the precinct supports Caldwell, but be careful who you trust. The warning was followed by an address and a time. Another piece of the puzzle, another potential ally, or another trap. Got something, Aaliyah called from her laptop. Records of payments from one of Caldwell's shell companies to an offshore account. Monthly transfers, always the same amount. Payoffs? Looks like it. And guess whose signature is on the incorporation papers? Harold Gaines. The revelation hit Malik like a physical blow. His mentor, the man who'd shaped his entire career, was part of the corruption he was fighting against. There's more, Aaliyah continued, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Gaines retired 3 years ago, but he's still on the payroll as a consultant. The payments go back 15 years. He taught me everything I know about being a cop, Malik said quietly. Was any of it real? Maybe that's what makes it worse, Aaliyah replied. Maybe he really believed in justice once, before the system corrupted him. Their conversation was interrupted by urgent knocking. Jamal burst in, out of breath and still in uniform. They found Vanessa, he gasped. Caldwell's sending a team to bring her in. Tonight. Malik was already moving, gathering his few possessions. How long do we have? They leave in an hour. But Malik. Jamal hesitated. They're not planning to bring her back alive. The race was on. They had to reach Vanessa before Caldwell's men, but they also had to be careful. One traffic stop, one recognition, and everything would fall apart. Aaliyah made some calls, calling in favors from fellow journalists. Within minutes, she had a route planned that would avoid major highways and police checkpoints. If we leave. Now we can beat them by 2 hours, she said, shutting her laptop. But Malik, this is risky. We'll be exposed on the road. We don't have a choice, he replied, checking the burner phone's battery. Vanessa's our best chance at proving what really happened to Catherine. As they prepared to leave, Jamal pulled Malik aside. There's something else you should know. Internal Affairs isn't just looking the other way. They're actively involved. Detective Harrison's been coordinating with Caldwell, helping cover up evidence. The corruption ran deeper than any of them had imagined. It wasn't just a few bad cops protecting their own. It was an entire system designed to maintain power at any cost. They left under cover of darkness, Aaliyah driving while Malik hunched down in the back seat. The city lights faded behind them. As they headed north, each mile taking them closer to either salvation or disaster. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by updates from Jamal about the pursuit team's movements. They were making good time, but so were Caldwell's men. Dawn was breaking when they reached the small Tennessee town where Vanessa was hiding. The morning mist hung low over empty streets, and somewhere a church bell tolled the hour. There, Aaliyah pointed to a small diner on the corner. Through the window, they could see a young woman matching Vanessa's description serving coffee to early morning customers. How do we play this? Aaliyah asked, parking across the street. Malik watched the diner, noting the security cameras, the exits, the handful of customers inside. We need to get her out without causing a scene. If Caldwell's men show up and find the place in chaos, they'll know we were here. They waited until Vanessa took her break, following her as she stepped outside for a cigarette. The moment she lit up, Malik approached, keeping his hands visible. Vanessa Mitchell? She froze, cigarette halfway to her lips. Who are you? My name is Malik Johnson. I know about Catherine Martinez, about Ethan Caldwell, and I know you're in danger. The cigarette fell from her trembling fingers. You're that cop they're hunting, the one they framed. We need to leave. Now. Caldwell's men are coming for you, and they're not planning to let you live. Vanessa glanced around nervously, then back at the diner. I have a life here. No, Malik said gently. You have a hiding place, and it's about to be compromised. A police siren wailed in the distance. Vanessa's face went pale. Okay, she whispered. Let me get my purse. But as she turned toward the diner, a black SUV rounded the corner, moving fast. Through the windshield, Malik recognized one of Caldwell's trusted lieutenants. No time. He grabbed Vanessa's arm. Run! They sprinted for Aaliyah's car as more sirens joined the first. The quiet morning erupted into chaos as police vehicles converged from all directions. Aaliyah gunned the engine before they'd fully closed the doors, tires squealing as they accelerated away from the diner. In the rearview mirror, Malik watched Caldwell's men pour out of their vehicles, weapons drawn. They'll set up roadblocks, Vanessa said, her voice shaking. They've done this before when Ethan... She trailed off, but Malik understood. This wasn't the first time she'd had to run from the Caldwells. Tell me everything, he said as Aaliyah navigated through back streets, trying to lose their pursuers. About Catherine, about Ethan, about all of it. Vanessa took a deep breath, and as they raced through the Tennessee countryside, she began to speak. The truth, when it finally came out, was even darker than Malik had imagined. Behind them, sirens wailed and radios crackled as the hunt continued. But this time, they had something Caldwell couldn't buy or threaten away. A witness ready to tell the truth, no matter the cost. The sun climbed higher in the sky as they drove, its light revealing the fear and determination on their faces. The battle for justice had entered a new phase, and there would be no turning back. The safe house felt smaller with each passing hour. Malik paced the cramped living room while Vanessa huddled on a threadbare couch, hands wrapped around a cooling cup of coffee. Aaliyah's laptop hummed on the kitchen counter, scanning police frequencies. 3 days had passed since their narrow escape from Tennessee, and the weight of confinement pressed down on all of them. Tell me again about the night Catherine died, Malik said, stopping by the window. Through a gap in the blinds, he watched rain turn the street into a mirror of reflected streetlights. Vanessa's fingers tightened around her cup. I've told you everything. Tell me again. Every detail matters. She closed her eyes, revisiting memories she'd tried to bury. Ethan was using again. He'd been clean for 2 months, but something set him off. Catherine tried to help. She always tried to help. That's what got her killed. Thunder rolled across the sky as Vanessa continued. I was there that night. Catherine called me, scared. Said Ethan was different this time, more violent. By the time I got to the house, her voice cracked. Captain Caldwell was already there, cleaning up. His son's mess. He saw me. Told me to forget what I'd seen if I wanted to stay alive. But you didn't forget, Malik said softly. How could I? Catherine was my friend. We met in college, shared dreams, plans. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Now she's dead. And I'm running for my life. Malik's phone buzzed, a message from Jamal. Meeting arranged with Gaines, tonight, 10 p.m. Malik stared at the message, conflict churning in his gut. Harold Gaines had been more than a mentor. He'd been a father figure, the man who'd taught him everything about being a good cop. Finding. His name in Caldwell's payroll records had felt like a personal betrayal. You're not really going? Aaliyah looked up from her laptop. It's obviously a trap. Maybe, Malik replied. But Gaines knows everything. He's been part of this system for decades. We need what he knows. And if he turns you in? Then you get Vanessa's testimony to the feds. Make sure the truth comes out. Aaliyah stood, frustration evident in her movements. That's not good enough. Your family needs you alive, Malik. Zuri needs her father. The mention of his daughter sent a fresh wave of pain through his chest. He hadn't seen her in weeks, hadn't held her, heard her laugh. The separation was a constant ache, like a bullet wound that wouldn't heal. I have to try, he said finally. Gaines is the key to all of this. He knows where all the bodies are buried. As night fell, they prepared for the meeting. Aaliyah set up surveillance around the meeting point, an old fishing dock on Lake Lanier. Jamal arranged to be on patrol in the area, ready to warn them of any police movement. If anything feels wrong, Aaliyah insisted, handing Malik a wire. You get out. Promise me. He nodded, though they both knew he'd stay if it meant getting answers. The wire felt cold against his skin as he taped it in place. The drive to Lake Lanier was tense. Rain continued to fall, reducing visibility and turning the roads into slick ribbons of black asphalt. Malik watched lightning split the sky, remembering nights when he'd sat with Gaines after shifts, learning from the older officer's experience. The dock appeared through the rain, a dark shape extending into the churning lake. A single figure stood at its end, outlined by distant lightning. Even from a distance, Malik recognized Gaines's broad shoulders, his military posture. I've got eyes on the perimeter. Aaliyah's voice crackled through his earpiece. No movement yet. Malik stepped onto the dock, wood creaking beneath his feet. Each step brought him closer to answers, or to disaster. Gaines didn't turn as he approached, keeping his gaze on the storm-tossed lake. You shouldn't have come, son, Gaines said when Malik reached him. His voice carried the same warmth it always had, making the situation even more surreal. Had to know why, Malik replied. Why you're part of this. Why you let them corrupt everything we stand for. Gaines turned then, his weathered face sad in the darkness. You think it's that simple? Good versus evil, right versus wrong? The world's more complicated than what they teach you at the academy. Murder isn't complicated. Catherine Martinez is dead because you and Caldwell protect killers with badges. We protect the department, Gaines corrected. The system. Yes, sometimes that means covering up mistakes, looking the other way. But without the system, there's chaos. Lightning flashed, illuminating both men's faces. In that instant, Malik saw something in his mentor's eyes he'd never noticed before. Fear. What do they have on you? Malik asked. What made you choose? This side? Gaines laughed, but there was no humor in it. Choice? There was never a choice, Malik. You're either part of the system, or the system destroys you. I learned that 30 years ago, just like you're learning it now. Movement on the South Road. Aaliyah's urgent whisper came through the earpiece. Multiple vehicles approaching. Malik tensed, but Gaines raised his hands. They're not here. For you. Not yet. I wanted to talk first, to explain. Explain what? How you betrayed everything you taught me? To explain reality. Gaines stepped closer, his voice intense. You think you're fighting corruption? You're fighting human nature. Power corrupts, and law enforcement has power. That's never going to change. So we just accept it? Let men like Caldwell murder with impunity? We manage it, control it, keep it from spreading too far. Gaines sighed. What happened to Catherine was tragic, but if we took down everyone involved, the entire department would collapse. Thousands of cases would be compromised. Criminals would walk free. And Ethan Caldwell walks free instead. Ethan's sick. He needs help, not prison. And Jonathan Caldwell, for all his faults, keeps order in the department. Without him, someone worse would take control. The rain intensified, drumming on the dock. Malik felt each drop like an accusation. You didn't just accept this corruption, you helped build it. Those offshore accounts, the monthly payments. Insurance, Gaines said simply. Everyone needs protection, Malik, even the protectors. 3 more vehicles, Aaliyah warned. They're establishing a perimeter. Gaines must have seen something change in Malik's expression. They're here to bring you in, peacefully if possible. You can end this now, son. Take a deal. Protect your family. Like you protected Catherine's family? Or Vanessa? Vanessa Mitchell is a complication we don't need. Gaines's voice hardened. Where is she, Malik? Safe. Beyond your reach. No one's beyond reach. You should know that by now. Gaines pulled out his phone, showing Malik the screen. It displayed a live feed from a security camera, Tanisha and Zori entering their house, followed by 2 plainclothes officers. Protection detail, Gaines explained. Or hostages. Depends on your next move. Rage surged through Malik, hot and violent. You son of a bitch. You taught me to protect the innocent. I taught you to survive. Now I'm teaching you one last lesson. Sometimes the price of survival is compromise. Multiple units moving in. Aaliyah's voice was urgent now. Malik, you need to go, now. But Malik stood his ground, staring at the man who'd shaped his career, his principles. You're wrong. The price of compromise is our soul. And I'm not paying it. Gaines shook his head sadly. Then you've sealed your fate. And theirs. He reached for something under his jacket. Malik moved purely on instinct, years of training taking over. He caught Gaines's wrist as the gun appeared. Twisting hard. The weapon splashed into the dark water as both men grappled on the wet dock. Don't make me hurt you, Malik growled. You already have, Gaines gasped, by forcing us to do this the hard way. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Flashlight beams began to sweep the shoreline. Malik shoved Gaines away and ran, his feet, finding purchase on the slick wood through muscle memory and desperate need. He's heading north, Gaines shouted behind him. Don't let him reach the tree line. Malik sprinted through the rain, heart pounding. He'd known it was a trap, known Gaines would betray him, but the reality still cut deep. Every lesson, every piece of advice, every moment of mentorship. Had it all been a lie? Cars waiting by the maintenance shed. Aaliyah guided him through the darkness. 50 yards north. Flashlight beams crisscrossed behind him as Malik ran. Orders were shouted. Boots thundered on wet ground. A shot cracked through the night, the bullet whining past his head. He reached the shed, found Aaliyah's car idling in the shadows. The door opened before he reached it, and he dove inside. Aaliyah floored the accelerator before he could fully close the door. As they sped away, Malik caught a final glimpse of Gaines in the rearview mirror. His mentor stood in the rain, watching them escape, his expression unreadable in the darkness. They'll follow, Aaliyah said, taking a sharp turn onto a service road. Let them, Malik replied, his voice hard. I've got everything I need. He pulled out his phone, playing back the recording of his conversation with Gaines. Every admission, every threat captured perfectly. This could help, Aaliyah agreed, but it also makes you more dangerous to them. They'll come at you harder now. Good. Malik stared out at the rain-swept night. Because I'm done playing defense. It's time to take the fight to them. His phone buzzed. A message from Jamal. Caldwell knows about Vanessa. Moving her to a new location. Be careful. Another message followed, this one from an unknown number. A photo of Tanisha and Zuri at dinner, taken through their kitchen window. The message below it was simple. Time's running out. Malik closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every decision, every consequence. He'd lost his mentor tonight, but he'd gained something more valuable. Clarity. The system wasn't just broken, it was actively malicious. And he was going to tear it down, piece by corrupt piece. Where to? Aaliyah asked as they reached the highway. Back to Atlanta, Malik said. It's time to show everyone who Harold Gaines and Jonathan Caldwell really are. The car sped through the storm, carrying them toward a confrontation that would change everything. Behind them, sirens faded into the night. But Malik knew the reprieve was temporary. The real storm was just beginning. In his mind, he heard Gaines's words again. Power corrupts. Maybe that was true, but what his mentor had never understood was that truth had its own power, and Malik was about to unleash it. Rain pelted the windows of Alia's apartment as she hunched over her laptop, coffee growing cold beside her. The clock on the wall read 3:27 a.m. She'd been analyzing traffic camera footage for hours, following the digital breadcrumbs of Ethan Caldwell's movements on the night of Catherine's murder. There! She jolted upright, calling to Malik, who was dozing on her couch. "Look at this." Malik moved to peer over her shoulder. On the screen, a grainy figure stumbled out of Captain Caldwell's house at 2:14 a.m., getting into a black SUV. The cyberbia timestamp matched the estimated time of Catherine's death. "Can you clean it up?" Malik asked, squinting at the footage. Alia's fingers flew across the keyboard. The image sharpened, revealing Ethan Caldwell's distinctive features, his clothes, stained dark with what they now knew was Catherine's blood. "This puts him at the scene," Malik said, straightening. "But we need more. Caldwell will claim Ethan arrived after, that he was trying to help. Then it's a good thing I found this." Alia pulled up another video, this one from an ATM camera, across the street. It showed Ethan arriving at the house an hour earlier, clearly agitated, Catherine following him inside. She never came out. Malik's phone buzzed. "Jamal. Got those internal files you wanted. You need to see this now." 20 minutes later, Jamal slipped into the apartment, a manila envelope tucked under his raincoat. His uniform was soaked, and his eyes darted nervously around the room. "I had to call in every favor I had," he said, laying out documents on Alia's kitchen table. "But these prove everything. Financial records, internal memos, years of covered-up investigations. The documents told a damning story. Monthly payments to officers who'd witnessed misconduct, transfers to offshore accounts. Internal affairs reports mysteriously vanished. Each paper added another layer to the corruption they were fighting." "There's more," Jamal continued, pulling out his phone. "I managed to get audio from inside the precinct, Caldwell threatening officers who wanted to come clean. The recording played, filling the room with Caldwell's voice. 'Remember who protected you after the Martinez incident. Remember who can I take everything away. Your badge, your pension, your freedom, it all goes through me.' This is enough to bring him down," Alia said, already typing notes for her story. "Not yet," Malik cut in. "We need Vanessa's testimony to tie it all together. Where is she?" "Safe house in Marietta," Jamal replied. "But Malik, there's a problem. One of our protective detail is compromised. Thompson's been feeding information to Caldwell." Malik cursed, grabbing his jacket. "We need to move her now." "Wait," Alia caught his arm. "There's something else. You need to see first." She pulled up an email chain on her laptop. These messages were in the files Jamal brought. They're between Caldwell and the DA's office, dated right after Catherine's murder. Malik read quickly, his expression darkening. The emails revealed a coordinated effort to suppress evidence, with prosecutors actively helping to build the false narrative against him. "The whole system's rotten," he muttered. "Not everyone," Jamal argued. "More officers are starting to question Caldwell. Your story's getting out, making people think." A notification popped up on Alia's screen, a news alert. She clicked it, and their blood ran cold. The headline read, "Key witness in police corruption case found dead." But it wasn't Vanessa. "Oh God," Alia breathed. "They killed Thompson. The protective detail officer. Warning shot," Malik said grimly. "They're sending a message. We need to move now." They split up, Jamal to create a diversion at the precinct, Alia to prepare her story for publication, and Malik to get Vanessa to safety. But as Malik reached for the door, Alia grabbed his hand. "Be careful," she said softly. "They're desperate now. Desperate people make mistakes, but they're also the most dangerous." The drive to Marietta felt endless. Every set of headlights could be a tail, every parked car a potential ambush. Malik's burner phone buzzed with updates from Jamal about police movements, each message ratcheting up the tension. He reached the safe house at dawn, just as the rain finally began to ease. Everything looked normal, but the hairs on his neck stood up. Something felt wrong. His instincts saved his life. As he approached the front door, a shadow moved in his peripheral vision. He dove behind a parked car as gunfire shattered the morning. "Quiet! They're already here!" he shouted into his phone, drawing the backup weapon Jamal had given him. "Vanessa!" More shots answered him. Through the house's window, he caught glimpses of movement. At least 3 attackers inside. But where? Was Vanessa? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Back door, hurry." Staying low, Malik circled the house. He found Vanessa crouched behind an air conditioning unit, shaking but alive. She'd hidden when the first attacker breached the house. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded, unable to speak. Sirens wailed in the distance. But were they friend or foe? They couldn't wait to find out. Malik led Vanessa through neighboring yards, keeping to shadows and cover. They made it 3 blocks before a black SUV screeched around the corner. Malik recognized the driver, one of Caldwell's most trusted officers. "Run!" He pushed Vanessa toward a narrow alley. More shots rang out behind them as they sprinted through the maze of suburban backyards. Malik's phone buzzed again. Aaliyah. "Got a car waiting 2 blocks south. Yellow house with green shutters. Keys under the mat." They reached the house just as another SUV appeared. Malik found the keys, started the engine, and floored it before Vanessa's door was fully closed. "They why?" "Knew," Vanessa gasped as they sped away. "Someone told them where I was." Thompson wasn't the only mole, Malik agreed grimly. "But right now, we need to focus on getting you somewhere safe. You're our key witness, Vanessa. Without your testimony, all our evidence is circumstantial." She turned to him, eyes fierce, despite her fear. "I'll testify. Catherine deserves justice. We all do." Back at Aaliyah's apartment, they found her preparing to go live with the story. Her living room had transformed into a command center, multiple screens showing news feeds, police channels, and document scans. "Thompson's death changed everything," she explained, fingers flying over her keyboard. "His murder's too big to cover up. It's creating cracks in Caldwell's organization. Officers are starting to talk. Then we need to give them something to talk about," Malik said. "Release everything, all of it." "It'll cause chaos," Jamal warned, arriving with fresh intelligence from the precinct. "The whole department could collapse." "Maybe it needs to," Malik replied. "Tear it down, rebuild it right." Aaliyah nodded, pulling up her drafted exposé. "Once I publish this, there's no going back. The evidence, the corruption, the murders, it all comes out." "Do it," Malik and Vanessa said simultaneously. Aaliyah's finger hovered over the enter key for a moment, then pressed down. The story went live, broadcasting their evidence to the world. The reaction was immediate. Phone lines lit up. Social media exploded. News vans began appearing outside the precinct. The thin blue wall was beginning to crack, but their victory was short-lived. Malik's phone buzzed with a video message. His heart stopped when he opened it. The video showed Tanisha and Zuri being escorted from their house by Caldwell's men, forcibly, led to an unmarked car. "Insurance policy," read the message beneath. "Time to end this, Johnson." Malik's hands shook with rage. "I'll kill him." "That's what he wants." Aaliyah grabbed his arm. "He's desperate. The evidence is out. People are talking. He's losing control. He has my family, and we'll get them back," Jamal promised. "But we do it smart. We do it right." They gathered around Aaliyah's laptop, watching as their story spread like wildfire. More officers came forward, adding their testimonies. The wall of silence was crumbling. But Caldwell wasn't finished. News alerts showed him calling an emergency press conference, standing at the podium with his usual confident smile. "These allegations are a desperate attempt by a corrupt officer to avoid justice," he declared. "Malik Johnson betrayed his badge, murdered an informant, and is now trying to drag good officers through the mud to save himself." The press corps erupted with questions, but Caldwell raised his hands. "We have evidence of Johnson's crimes that we've been waiting to release. Surveillance footage, financial records, witness statements. By day's end, everyone will know the truth." "He's bluffing," Jamal said. We have the real evidence. But he has my family, Malik reminded them. And he's willing to do anything to maintain control. Vanessa stood suddenly, her face set with determination. Then let's take that control away. I'm ready to go public. Right now. Live interview, full story. Aaliyah spun to her computer. I can have a camera crew here in 20 minutes. But Vanessa, once you do this, you can never go back. Your life will never be the same. My life changed the night Catherine died, Vanessa replied. At least this way, her death means something. While Aaliyah made arrangements, Malik received another message. A location and a choice. Come alone and surrender, or never see his family. Again. Whatever you're thinking, don't, Aaliyah said, reading his expression. It's a trap. Of course it is, Malik agreed. But I'm done playing defense. Vanessa, tell your story. Aaliyah, keep pushing the evidence. Jamal, get word to every officer you trust. It's time to end this. What are you going to do? Jamal asked. Malik checked his weapon, thinking of Tanisha's strength and Zuri's smile. I'm going to remind Captain Caldwell why he should have never threatened my family. The room fell silent as the weight of the moment settled over them. They'd reached the point of no return. The evidence was public, the truth was spreading, and the final confrontation loomed. Outside, thunder rolled across Atlanta's sky, a reminder that some storms change everything they touch. By day's end, nothing would be the same, for better or worse. Malik hugged each of them, lingering a moment with Vanessa. Catherine would be proud of you, he said softly. Make them pay, she replied. All of them. He stepped out into the wall. Rain, feeling the weight of his choice. Behind him, Vanessa prepared to tell her story to the world. Ahead, somewhere in the city, Caldwell waited with his family. The war for truth was about to reach its climax, and Malik Johnson was ready for the final battle. Judge Marcus Reynolds sat in his dimly lit chambers, studying the evidence spread across his mahogany desk. 8 years ago, he'd mentored a young cadet named Malik Johnson, seeing in him the same fire for justice that he'd once had. Now, that same officer sat across from him, a fugitive with a story that threatened to shake Atlanta's law enforcement to its core. This goes deeper than I imagined, Reynolds said, setting down a particularly damning document. The offshore accounts, the systematic cover-ups, the murders. How long have you known? Not long enough, Malik replied, his voice heavy with regret. I should have seen it sooner. Maybe Catherine would still be alive. Reynolds leaned back, studying Malik's face. The young officer he'd mentored had aged years in weeks, but his eyes still held that same unwavering determination. They have my family, Judge, Malik continued. Caldwell's using them as leverage, trying to force me to surrender. But if I do, they'll kill all of you, Reynolds finished. Make it look like a confrontation gone wrong, classic cleanup operation. A knock at the door made both men tense. Reynolds' secretary entered carrying a tablet. Sir, you need to see this. It's going viral. On the screen, Vanessa Mitchell sat in Aaliyah's makeshift studio, her face composed, but determined as she spoke directly to the camera. My name is Vanessa Mitchell, and I was there the night Catherine Martinez was murdered. What happened wasn't an accident. It wasn't a tragedy. It was cold-blooded murder, covered up by the very people sworn to protect us. Malik watched as Vanessa detailed everything. Ethan's drug-fueled rage, Catherine's desperate attempts to calm him, Captain Caldwell's arrival and immediate move to cover up his son's crime. The interview's been live for 20 minutes, the secretary reported. It's already been shared thousands of times. News networks are picking it up. Reynolds' phone began ringing. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. Police Commissioner. This is about to get very complicated. It already is, Malik said, standing. But I need your help, Judge. One last time. Reynolds held up a hand. Before you continue, you should know that helping a fugitive could end my career. 20 years on the bench, gone in an instant. I know, but you once told me that justice is worth any price. A smile creased Reynolds' weathered face. I did say that, didn't I? Well then, Officer Johnson, let's see about getting your family back. Across town, in the Atlanta Police Department's headquarters, Captain Jonathan Caldwell watched the same interview, his knuckles white as he gripped his desk. Behind him, Ethan paced like a caged animal. She's lying, Ethan snarled. That bitch is lying about everything. Shut up, Caldwell snapped. Just shut up. I need to think. His phone hadn't stopped ringing since Vanessa's interview began. The commissioner, the DA, the media, everyone wanted answers. The carefully constructed wall of silence was crumbling, and with it, decades of control. An officer burst into his office without knocking. Sir, there's a situation developing downtown. Protesters are gathering outside the courthouse. They're demanding an independent investigation. Handle it, Caldwell ordered. Sir, there's more. Some of our officers, they're joining the protesters. That got Caldwell's attention. Who? Rodriguez, Chen, Williams, about a dozen others. They're speaking to reporters, collaborating Vanessa Mitchell's story. The facade of control finally cracked. Caldwell swept everything off his desk in a rage, sending papers and electronics crashing to the floor. Find them, he growled. Find every officer who's turned against us. I want them dealt with. Sir? The officer shifted uncomfortably. These are fellow officers. They stopped being officers the moment they betrayed the department. Now get out. Once alone, Caldwell pulled out a special phone, one dedicated to his most sensitive contacts. It's time. Clean house. Everyone who might talk, everyone who's already talked. I don't care how you do it. Across the city, Aaliyah Carter was orchestrating her own operation. Her apartment had become a nerve center, coordinating between trusted officers, protest organizers, and media contacts. The momentum's building, she told Jamal, who'd arrived with more intel from inside the department. Vanessa's interview broke the dam. More whistleblowers are coming forward every hour. Yeah, and Caldwell's noticing, Jamal replied grimly. He's ordered a purge. Anyone who's spoken out is being targeted. Williams barely escaped an accident on patrol. Rodriguez's house was broken into. Aaliyah's phone buzzed with a message from Malik. Judge Reynolds is in. Plan is set. Get everyone in position. She turned to Jamal. It's time. Are your people ready? Ready as they'll ever be. But Malik, what he's planning is suicide. No, Aaliyah said firmly. It's justice. The plan unfolded like a complex dance. First, Judge Reynolds called a press conference, announcing an emergency hearing to review evidence of departmental corruption. The media swarmed the courthouse steps. Then, trusted officers began reporting suspicious vehicle movements around an abandoned shopping center on the city's south side, the same location where Caldwell was holding Tanisha and Zuri. Finally, Malik himself appeared, not in hiding, but standing boldly before the media outside the precinct. His voice carried across every major news network as he issued his challenge. Captain Caldwell, he spoke directly to the cameras. You've built your power on fear and corruption. You've murdered innocents, betrayed your oath, and now you're holding my family hostage. But that ends today. He held up a flash drive. I have every piece of evidence, every document, every recording, every dirty secret. In 1 hour, it all goes public. Unless... Malik paused, letting the tension build. Unless you face me. 1 hour. The old shopping center where you're holding my family. Just you and me, settling. This once and for all. The video went viral instantly. Social media exploded. News helicopters began circling the shopping center. Caldwell's phone rang again. The commissioner, demanding he respond to Malik's challenge. In the abandoned shopping center, Tanisha held Zuri close, listening to the helicopters overhead. 2 of Caldwell's men guarded them, but their attention was divided, watching the news unfold on their phones. Mommy, Zuri whispered. Is Daddy coming? Tanisha stroked her daughter's hair, remembering Malik's words from so long ago. Being brave. Doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when you are scared. Yes, baby, she answered. Daddy's coming. Outside the shopping center, unmarked police vehicles began arriving. But these weren't Caldwell's corrupt officers. They were the honest cops, the ones who'd chosen truth over loyalty. Led by Jamal, they took up positions surrounding the building. Judge Reynolds arrived with federal agents, his own insurance, policy against Caldwell's influence. Aaliyah coordinated with news crews, ensuring every angle would be covered. No one could disappear today without the world watching. Malik approached the shopping center on foot, his steps measured and deliberate. He wore no vest, carried no visible weapon. The flash drive hung from a chain around his neck. Final positions. Jamal's voice crackled through hidden earpieces. Everyone ready? Acknowledgements came back from all sectors. Hidden snipers, undercover officers, federal agents, all in place, all waiting. Caldwell's black SUV screeched into the parking lot right on time. He emerged alone, but Malik knew better. There would be shooters hidden in the surrounding buildings, insurance against any tricks. Bold move, Johnson, Caldwell called out as they approached each other. Very public, very dramatic, but pointless. No. More games, Malik replied. No more hiding behind badges and power. Face what you've done. What I've done? Caldwell laughed. I've maintained order, protected the department. Everything I've done has been for the greater good. Catherine Martinez, Marcus Thompson. Every innocent person you've sacrificed for your greater good. Was it worth it? You still don't understand, Caldwell shook his head. The system requires sacrifice. Always has. Always will. I just make sure those sacrifices serve a purpose. Like sacrificing your own son? That hit home. Caldwell's facade cracked slightly. I protected Ethan. You used him, just like you use everyone. But it's over. Your own officers are turning. Against you. The evidence is out. Vanessa's testimony is being broadcast right now. You've lost. Have I? Caldwell smiled coldly. Your wife and daughter might disagree. As if on cue, Caldwell's men emerged from the building, pushing Tanisha, and Zuri ahead of them. Zuri's eyes lit up when she saw Malik, but Tanisha held her back. Daddy, Zuri called out. It's okay, baby, Malik kept his voice steady. Everything's going to be okay. That depends entirely on you, Caldwell said. The flash drive, now. Then, you'll sign a confession, admitting to everything. The informant's murder, the drug connections, all of it. Your family goes free, and you go to prison. Everyone wins. Almost everyone, Malik agreed. Then he smiled. Now. Several things happened at once. Hidden officers emerged from their positions. Federal agents moved in from all sides. News cameras captured everything. But most importantly, Tanisha acted. She'd seen Malik's signal, the slight nod that told her to be ready. She pushed Zuri toward one of Jamal's trusted officers who'd worked his way close, then drove her elbow into her captor's. Throat chaos erupted. Caldwell reached for his weapon, but Malik was faster. They crashed together as gunfire erupted from multiple directions. It's over, Malik shouted, pinning Caldwell down. Your snipers are neutralized. Your men are surrounded. We found Ethan, trying to flee the country. Everyone talks, everyone falls. Caldwell struggled, but years of desk duty had softened him. You've destroyed everything, he spat. No, Malik replied. I've exposed everything. The department will survive. It'll be stronger, cleaner. But you're finished. Federal agents moved in, taking control. News cameras captured everything. Caldwell's arrest, the reunion of Malik's family, the triumph of justice over corruption. Zuri ran to her father, jumping into his arms. Daddy, you came. Always, baby girl. Malik held her tight, feeling Tanisha's arms wrap around them both. I'll always come for you. Aaliyah approached with her camera crew, but Malik shook his head. This moment wasn't for the media. It was for family, for healing, for the beginning of something new. Later, as the sun set over Atlanta, Malik stood with Judge Reynolds, watching Caldwell being led away in handcuffs. "It's not over," Reynolds warned. "The department will need rebuilding. Trust will need to be restored. It's a long road ahead." "I know," Malik replied. "But for the first time in a long time, it's the right road." Across the city, honest officers celebrated. Whistleblowers emerged from hiding. Families of victims finally saw hope for justice. The thin blue wall had cracked, but something stronger was rising from its ruins. True justice, built on truth and accountability. Malik Johnson had lost his badge fighting corruption, but he'd kept his honor, and in the end, that made all the difference. Federal prosecutor Sarah Martinez's office buzzed with activity as her team processed the mountain of evidence against Caldwell and his network. Boxes of documents lined the walls, each containing years of corruption carefully hidden behind badges and oaths. Malik sat across from her desk, watching as she reviewed Aaliyah's latest findings. "This goes beyond anything we imagined," Martinez said, setting down another file. 23 officers involved in direct corruption, 12 judges compromised, 6 prosecutors taking bribes. The entire system was infected. "And that's just what we've uncovered so far," Malik replied, thinking of the countless cases still to be reviewed. The work ahead seemed endless. A knock at the door interrupted them. Jamal entered, still in uniform but wearing a detective's badge now. His reward for helping expose the corruption. "They found Caldwell's backup files," he announced, dropping a new stack of documents on Martinez's desk. "Hidden in a storage unit under his mother's name. It's everything. Blackmail material, financial records, even recordings of meetings. He documented everything." "Insurance," Malik mused. "In case anyone ever turned against him." "Now it's evidence against his entire network," Martinez smiled grimly. "But we have a problem. Ethan Caldwell's attorney is pushing for a deal. He's offering to testify against his father in exchange for reduced charges." The mention of Ethan made Malik's jaw clench. The man who'd murdered Catherine Martinez, who'd started this whole nightmare, trying to save himself by betraying his father. "No deal," Malik said firmly. "He's a murderer." "A murderer with valuable information," Martinez countered. "His testimony could help us unravel decades of corruption. Sometimes justice requires uncomfortable compromises." Before Malik could respond, his phone buzzed. The message made his blood run cold. "Vanessa's gone. Safe house compromised." He was on his feet instantly. "When?" Another message followed with an address. Without waiting for Martinez or Jamal, Malik rushed out. The drive to the safe house felt endless, his mind racing with possibilities. They'd thought Vanessa was secure, protected by trusted officers. How had they found her? The safe house was a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Police cars already surrounded the building, their lights painting the pre-dawn darkness in red and blue. Aaliyah waited for him outside, her face tight with worry. "What happened?" Malik demanded. "Professional hit," she explained, leading him inside. They knew exactly when to strike. Took out the security cameras first, then the protective detail. 2 officers down, but they'll live. The apartment showed signs of a struggle. Overturned. Furniture, broken glass, blood spatter on the walls. But no body. "They took her alive," Jamal said, joining them. He'd followed Malik from the prosecutor's office. Traffic cameras caught a black van heading east. "We're tracking it now." Malik's phone rang, an unknown number. He put it on speaker. "Mr. Johnson." The voice was cultured, calm. "By now you've discovered our little retrieval operation. Ms. Mitchell is safe for the moment. Whether she stays that way depends on you." "Who is this?" "Someone who invested heavily in Captain Caldwell's operation. His arrest has caused my associates considerable inconvenience. But we're willing to be reasonable." "What do you want?" "A simple exchange. The evidence you've collected for Ms. Mitchell's life. All of it. Documents, recordings, witness statements. You have 1 hour to decide." The line went dead. "We can't," Aaliyah said immediately. That evidence proves decades of corruption. It's justice for dozens of victims. It's Vanessa's life, Malik countered. After everything she risked to help us. Wait, Jamal interrupted, studying his phone. That call was routed through a cell tower near the old steel mill. The van was headed in that direction too. Malik knew the place, an abandoned industrial complex on the city's outskirts. Perfect for an exchange. Or an ambush. Call Martinez, he ordered Jamal. Get federal backup, but tell them to stay back until we give the signal. Aaliyah, I need you to do something else. The steel mill loomed against the brightening sky, its rusted structures reaching up like skeletal fingers. Malik approached alone, carrying a laptop bag. Security cameras tracked his movement, their red lights blinking in the shadows. A figure emerged from the main building, Harold Gaines. I should have known, Malik said as his former mentor approached. You were always the smarter one, weren't you? Letting Caldwell be the face while you handled the real power. Someone had to, Gaines replied. Jonathan was good at playing the role, but he lacked finesse, vision. He never understood that true power isn't about force, it's about control. Where's Vanessa? Gaines gestured, and two men led Vanessa out. She was bruised but defiant, her eyes meeting Malik's with determination. The evidence? Gaines asked. Malik held up the laptop bag. Everything we have, files, recordings, witness statements, it's all here. Show me. Malik opened the laptop, displaying folders filled with documents. Gaines's men approached to verify. The contents. Acceptable, Gaines nodded. Though I'm disappointed, Malik. I thought I taught you better than this. Trading justice for one life? You taught me that protecting the innocent matters more than anything. And you actually believe that? Gaines laughed. It was a line, son. Something we tell rookies to keep them motivated. The reality is messier. Like Catherine Martinez. Was her death just messy reality? Collateral damage. Unfortunate but necessary. The system requires sacrifice. You keep saying that, Malik took a step forward. But I don't think you believe it anymore. I think you're tired, Harold. Tired of the lies, the corruption, the weight of all those sacrifices. Something flickered in Gaines's eyes. Doubt, maybe even regret. But it passed quickly. What I believe doesn't matter. The evidence now. Malik handed over the laptop bag. As Gaines's men began checking the files, a small smile played across Malik's face. You know what your mistake was, Harold? Thinking you were the only one who could plan ahead. Suddenly, the mill erupted with movement. Federal agents emerged from hiding places, weapons trained on Gaines and his men. Above them, news helicopters appeared, cameras rolling. What have you done? Gaines demanded. Learned from the best, Malik replied. You taught me to always have a backup plan. Aaliyah's voice boomed from the helicopter's speakers. This is being broadcast live across every major network. The whole world is watching. Gaines's men looked to him for orders, but the fight had gone out of him. He looked suddenly old, tired. It's over, Harold, Malik said softly. But you can still do the right thing. One last lesson for your student. For a long moment, Gaines stood frozen in indecision. Then slowly, he reached into his jacket. His men tensed, but he withdrew only a small notebook. Names, he said, holding it out. Dates, accounts, everything you need to tear it all down. He smiled sadly. Maybe you were the better student after all. Federal agents moved in as Gaines surrendered. Other officers led his men away while medical teams attended to Vanessa. The sun had fully risen now, casting long shadows across the mill's rusted structures. Malik's phone buzzed. Tanisha, watching the broadcast at home with, Zuri, you okay? She asked. Yeah, he replied, watching Gaines being led away. I think I finally am. Back at the federal building, Martinez's team worked frantically to process Gaines's notebook. Each page revealed new corruption, new crimes, new names to investigate. This goes all the way to the state capitol, Martinez said, amazed. Senators, judges, business leaders. Gaines documented everything. Insurance, Malik replied. He learned that from Caldwell. Speaking of Caldwell, Jamal entered with news. Ethan's talking. Turns out he's not as loyal to his father as everyone thought. He's giving up everything. The murder, the cover-up, all of it. And Vanessa? Doctors say she'll be fine. She's already asking when she can complete her testimony. Malik nodded, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally beginning to lift. His phone buzzed with another message. Judge Reynolds. The Chief Justice is convening a special grand jury, the judge informed him. This will be the largest corruption investigation in state history. We'll need your help. Whatever you need, Malik promised. But first, I need to go home. I've missed too much time with my family. The drive home felt different now. The streets were the same, but the city felt cleaner somehow, as if Caldwell's corruption had cast a physical shadow that was finally lifting. He found Tanisha and Zuri waiting on their front porch. His daughter ran to him, jumping into his arms with the pure joy only children can express. Did you catch all the bad guys, Daddy? Malik hugged her tight, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair. Yeah, baby. We caught them. Tanisha joined them, her eyes shining with pride and love. So what happens now? Now. Malik looked at his family, then at the city beyond. Now we rebuild. Make things right. Inside, his phone continued to buzz with updates. More arrests being made, more evidence being uncovered, more corrupt officials facing justice. But those could wait. Right now, this moment with his family was all that mattered. Later that night, as Zuri slept peacefully in her bed, Malik sat on their back porch with Tanisha. The city lights twinkled in the distance, each one representing a home, a family, a life touched by the changes they'd set. In motion. You know it's not over, Tanisha said softly. There will be trials, testimonies, more fights ahead. I know, Malik replied, taking her hand. But for the first time, we're fighting on the right side of history. The truth is out there now. No more shadows, no more corruption eating away at the heart of things. Was it worth it? All the risk, the fear, the time apart? Malik thought about Catherine Martinez, about all the victims of corruption who'd never seen justice. He thought about Vanessa's courage, Aaliyah's determination, and even Gaines's final choice to do the right thing. Yeah, he said finally. It was worth it. Someone had to take a stand. A shooting star streaked across the sky, and Malik made a silent promise. To his family, to his city, to himself. The system had been broken, but they would build something better in its place. Something based on truth, justice, and the courage to stand up for what's right. The war wasn't over, but the most important battle had been won. The truth was out, the corrupt had fallen, and hope had returned to Atlanta's streets. For now, that was enough. 1 year later. The Atlanta Tribune's front page dominated Aaliyah's desk, her own byline bold beneath the headline, Corruption Investigation Leads to 143 Convictions, Former Captain Caldwell Sentenced to Life. She traced her fingers over the words, remembering the long journey that had led to this moment. Her phone buzzed. Malik. You seen the paper? Looking at it right now, she replied. Hard to believe it's really over. The trials are over, Malik corrected. The real work's just beginning. He was right. The convictions had shaken Atlanta's law enforcement to its core. Rebuilding trust would take years, maybe decades. But they had made a start. Aaliyah grabbed her recorder and laptop. See you at the ceremony? Wouldn't miss it. The police academy's graduation ceremony was different this year. Gone were the old guard speeches about brotherhood and loyalty above all. Instead, Judge Reynolds stood at the podium, addressing a new generation of officers. You enter service. At a crucial time, he told the graduates. Our department has faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger. But that strength comes with responsibility. Each of you must be vigilant, not just against crime on our streets, but against corruption in our ranks. In the front row, Malik sat, in his newly pressed captain's uniform, Tanisha and Zuri beside him. The brass on his collar still felt strange, a weight he was learning to carry. The true measure of an officer, Reynolds continued, isn't found in blind loyalty or unquestioning obedience. It's found in the courage to stand up for what's right, even when standing alone. 1 year ago, Captain Malik Johnson demonstrated that courage. Today he leads our department's new internal affairs division, ensuring that such corruption never takes root again. Applause filled the auditorium. Zuri, now 5, clapped loudest of all, proud of her daddy, even if she didn't fully understand why everyone else was clapping too. After the ceremony, they gathered in Reynolds's chambers, Malik, Aaliyah, Jamal, and Vanessa. The room held memories of that crucial meeting a year ago, when a fugitive officer had sought help from a retired judge. The department's latest integrity audit came back clean, Jamal reported. As head of anti-corruption task force, he'd overseen the investigation himself. No unauthorized accounts, no suspicious transfers, no patterns of case manipulation. Good, Malik nodded. But we keep checking. Monthly audits, random case reviews, body cam analysis, everything. We can't let our guard down. Speaking of staying vigilant, Aaliyah opened her laptop. I've been tracking some interesting patterns in the county prosecutor's office. Nothing concrete yet, but let me guess, Vanessa smiled. Time for another investigation? They all laughed, but there was determination beneath the humor. The past year had taught them that justice required constant vigilance. Vanessa had changed the most since that night at the steel mill. After her testimony helped convict both Caldwells, she'd joined Aaliyah at the Tribune, investigating corruption across the city. Her first-hand experience with the system's darkness made her uniquely qualified to expose it. How's the book coming? Malik asked her. Final chapter, she replied. Catherine's family reviewed it last week. They said it helps them understand, helps them heal. The mention of Catherine Martinez sobered the room. Her murder had sparked their fight against corruption, but the cost had been high, too high. I visited her grave yesterday, Vanessa continued softly. Left flowers, told her about everything that's changed. I think she'd be proud of what her death accomplished. She would be, Malik agreed. But she should be alive, planning her future, chasing her dreams. We can't forget that. Every victory against corruption, every dirty cop we catch, every case we solve right, we do it for her, and for everyone else the old system failed. A knock interrupted them. Officer Sarah Chen, one of the new recruits, stood in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, Captain, but we've got a situation. Officer involved shooting in Zone 3. The officer's refusing to make a statement, and his body cam footage is missing. Malik shared a look with his team. The old familiar tension filled the room. Another test, another chance to prove that things had really changed. I'll handle it, he told Chen. Jamal, pull all surveillance footage from the area. Aaliyah, check your sources, see if any witnesses are talking. Vanessa, review the officer's record. Look for any patterns we need to know about. They moved with practiced efficiency, each knowing their role. The fight for justice never really ended. It just took new forms. Later that evening, Malik sat in his office reviewing footage from the shooting. The missing body cam video had been accidentally deleted, but Jamal's team had recovered it. The truth was there in high definition. An officer abusing power, planting evidence, trying to cover his tracks. A year ago, such actions might have been buried in paperwork and brotherhood. Now, they would face the light. Tanisha brought him dinner, knowing he'd work late. Zuri had drawn him a picture, stick figures of their family, with Malik in his uniform standing tall. You're making a difference, Tanisha said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. The department's changing, the city's changing. Sometimes it feels too slow, he admitted. Every corrupt officer we catch, every cover-up we expose. Sometimes, I wonder if we're really changing things or just catching the ones who get caught. Change takes time. Look at Zuri's class. They had career day last week. 5 kids said they want to be police officers. Not because of the power or the badge, but because they want to help people like Captain Johnson. Malik smiled, touching the picture Zuri had drawn. Speaking of our girl, how's she doing with the move? They'd recently bought a new house in a quiet neighborhood. The old one held too many memories of surveillance and fear, of midnight escapes and tearful separations. She loves it, Tanisha replied, especially her new room. Though she did ask why we need such a big yard. Did you tell her it's for the puppy we're getting her for Christmas? Malik Johnson, that was supposed to be a surprise. Their laughter filled the office, chasing away the shadows of the day's darker concerns. This too was part of the change they'd fought for. The right to live normal lives, to plan futures, to laugh without fear. A text from Aliyah interrupted their moment. Witnesses coming forward about the shooting. Stories match the body cam footage. Officer Williams is trying to coordinate a cover-up with other units. Go, Tanisha said before Malik could speak. Make things right. He kissed her, grabbed his coat and headed out. The night was cool, stars bright above Atlanta's skyline. Somewhere in the city, an officer was learning the hard way that the old rules no longer applied. The next morning's paper would carry another story of corruption exposed and justice served. Aliyah's byline would detail how the department had caught and prosecuted one of its own, proving that no badge was above the law. But the real story wasn't in the headlines. It was in the small changes, the daily choices, the moments when officers chose right over easy, truth over loyalty, justice over power. At the precinct, Malik gathered his team. Jamal brought evidence from the shooting. Aliyah had witness statements. Vanessa had background files. They worked together, building a case that would stand up to any scrutiny. Officer Williams claims he's being targeted, Jamal reported. Says we're witch-hunting good cops. They always say that, Vanessa noted. Caldwell said the same thing. The difference is, Malik replied, now we have systems in place. Body cams that can't be easily deleted. Witness protection programs that actually protect. A department that investigates its own without fear or favor. And journalists who won't back down, Aliyah added with a smile. They worked through the day, building their case methodically. By evening, Officer Williams was in custody, his co-conspirators identified, their attempted cover-up exposed. Another one for your book, Malik told Vanessa as they wrapped up. The book's done, she replied. But maybe it's time for a sequel. After the fall, rebuilding trust in law enforcement. I like it, Aliyah said. But let's focus on the rebuilding part. People need to know things can change. That night, at home, Malik watched Zuri playing in their new yard. She was creating an elaborate game involving her stuffed animals, something about good guys catching bad guys. The good guys always win, right, Daddy? She asked, climbing into his lap. He thought about Catherine Martinez, about all they'd lost and gained in the fight for justice, about the ongoing struggle to maintain what they'd built. They win when good people work hard to do what's right, he told her. When they stay brave and honest, even when it's difficult. Like you did? Like we all did, baby. And like we keep doing every day. Later, after Zuri was asleep, Malik sat on their back porch with Tanisha. They could see the city, lights in the distance, each one representing a life touched by their fight for justice. Aliyah's running another story tomorrow, he said. About the changes in the department, the new oversight committees, the community involvement programs, the increased transparency. Is it making a difference? Tanisha asked. Really? Malik thought about the graduating class he'd addressed, about Officer Williams facing justice, about Zuri's simple faith in good triumphing over evil. Yeah, he said finally. It's making a difference. Not as fast as we'd like, not as completely as we need, but it's happening. The old system's gone and what we're building in its place. It's better, stronger, more just. His phone buzzed. Another case, another challenge, another chance to prove that change was possible. Go, Tanisha said, understanding in her eyes. Show them how it's done. Malik stood, straightened his uniform, and headed out to continue the fight. The war for justice wasn't over. It never really would be. But they had won something precious, the chance to build something better, to show that truth could triumph over power, that one person's courage could change a system. And in the end, that was what mattered most.